Okay, welcome to Sleep Month. I'm chatting with Michaela Newsom. Michaela, do you want to just tell us what you do and then we'll cover off sleep?
Hi, thank you, Emily. So I'm Michaela and I am a nutritional therapist. And yeah, I work with women going through perimenopause and help them with nutrition and lifestyle kind of changes and habits that will just make the whole transition a little bit easier.
Awesome. And I mean, sleep is such a biggie, isn't it? So many women in perimenopause have poor sleep.
Yeah,
And if we don't sleep well, oh my God, it impacts on everything.
absolutely. It's kind of like a bit of a vicious circle, isn't it? Because like if you don't sleep, then it massively impacts your hormones, and then that then makes it harder to sleep, and it just ends up in this kind of self-perpetuating spiral. And even there's loads of research to show that even like one night of bad sleep has a huge impact on your hormones next day, in particular things like your appetite hormones. So you'll then find that the next day you'll have cravings for all of this like junk food. You eat that, and then again that impacts your sleep. So again, it just kind of self-perpetuates. So getting sleep right in perimenopause is one of the most important things, and also for a lot of people it's one of the hardest things to try and nail and get right.
Absolutely. And it's so true. When we, I'm sure anybody watching this will have had that thing where they've had a bad night's sleep, and so the next morning they have a coffee, and then by mid-morning they're having a sugary snack, and then by lunchtime they're like, oh, I've got no energy, I'll just go and get whatever, and then by the evening it's like, I can't face cooking, so I'll grab a takeout.
Yeah,
And
totally.
none of those things in isolation is particularly going to be the end of the world or anything, but actually all of those things together, your poor body's going, wait.
Yeah.
We've got a spike of, oh brilliant, oh, and then another spike, and then oh, and yeah, your body doesn't know what's coming or going, does it?
No, absolutely not. And then your poor hormones, they go off into this kind of whole roller coaster as well. And it just makes it so much harder to get back on track. I mean, even myself, when my kids were little, they didn't sleep very well, and it was really tough. It was really tough to try and motivate myself to try and eat well and look after myself. So it's a tough one. So kind of what the three things that I kind of see when I'm working with women that kind of have the biggest impact are circadian rhythms. So you often find that people who work shifts or have irregular bedtimes really struggle with sleep. And that's partly to do with the fact that, our hormones and sleep, everything works on this 24-hour cycle. And so if you then start messing with that cycle, it throws everything out. And genetically, we are kind of programmed slightly differently. So you've probably heard people talk about owls versus larks.
Yeah.
So 40% of the population have like what's called a Lark chronotype, where they naturally tend to get up earlier. They have more energy in the mornings, they work better, they can concentrate better, but they do better when they go to bed earlier. And then about 30% of the population have an owl chronotype. So these are people that get their kind of energy or work better like late in the evening. And then the rest of the population are kind of somewhere in between. And I mean, sleep's important for everyone, but if you are an owl chronotype, then life is a little bit harder because society is set up for larks, isn't it? We're set to get up early, we're set to, start work early. And so, yeah, and if you are an owl chronotype, you're then kind of burning the candle at both ends, aren't you? Because you're getting up early, but then you're finding it hard to go to sleep at night. And so then you're staying up late as well.
Yeah, and there's actually a lot of judgment in society at large about not being able to get up, not being able to sort of spring out of bed in the morning. But if you're an owl, you're not going to spring out of bed in the morning, are you?
Yeah. I mean, my husband is definitely an owl and I'm definitely a lark. And I have to say, when we first got together, it drove me insane. And I would get really annoyed with him, like, get your ass out of bed, like, come and help me with the kids or whatever. But then, you know, I'm going to bed at 10 o'clock, whereas he's up till midnight or later. And so, you know, you do have to try and acknowledge that, and try and, where you can, try and account for that in kind of your lifestyle and stuff. So, I mean, the whole working from home thing, it's probably been quite a good thing for lots of owls, because, you know, they can flex their hours a bit more, to a kind of lifestyle and sleep pattern that kind of suits them more. So that's the one thing. And then we have to talk about stress, I guess, if we're talking about sleep and the impact that stress has on you. So, you know, obviously we can't avoid stress, but kind of trying to mitigate it and do what you can to minimize it, or just change your response to stress, can have a huge impact on your sleep. Now, one of the things with cortisol, which is our main stress hormone, is that it suppresses melatonin. And melatonin is obviously the hormone that triggers sleep. It doesn't actually make you fall asleep, but it's a bit like if you are thinking about athletics and like 100-meter race. Melatonin is kind of like the starter pistol. So it kind of kicks off the process, but it isn't actually involved in the sleep process itself. So things like, if you are working late in the evening, you've got cortisol pumping through, or if you're watching scary movies, or you're watching the news late at night, it's going to you're going to have high levels of cortisol, which is going to then inhibit the production of melatonin, which is going to impact how easy it is for you to fall asleep. And then one of the other causes of stress is blood sugar balance. So, you know, you'll always hear me rabbiting on about blood sugar balance when it comes to hormones, but it is because it is one of the most important things to get right. So, you know, if you are struggling with poor blood sugar balance, what can happen is during the night, your blood sugar levels can fall quite low, and that triggers like a stress response, and you release adrenaline and cortisol, and that release of hormones is what can wake you up in the night. So if you find you're waking up sort of like 2 to 3 in the morning, it's possible that it's issues with blood sugar balance. So things that you can do to try and mitigate that are making sure you eat protein with each meal, trying to not eat too early in the evenings, or if you do, maybe have like a little snack before you go to bed, but nothing too sugary, so like a piece of cheese or some nuts or something, just to try and kind of avoid that crash in the middle of the night. And then again, we've got things like stimulants, so caffeine and alcohol. So unfortunately, you know, alcohol really doesn't help with sleep. It might help you fall asleep more quickly, but the quality of sleep that you get is much, much worse. So I track my sleep, and I can tell immediately when I've had a glass of wine, because my deep sleep, which I'm quite a good sleeper at the moment, so I normally get about 2 hours deep sleep a night, but after a glass of wine, that can shrink down to like half an hour. So it's really about the quality of the sleep that you're getting. And also, actually, when you drink alcohol, your liver has to clear that out. And if you look at like Chinese medicine, they have a Chinese medicine clock, which is a certain time when each of the organs is most active, and the liver is actually between, I think it's 3 and 4 in the morning.
I think so, yeah.
So if you find you're waking up at that time every night, that is potentially a sign that something's going on with your liver, and that maybe you need a bit of liver support. And then obviously caffeine is a huge sleep disruptor. And what most people don't realize about caffeine actually is that it actually has a half-life of 6 to 7 hours. So having a cup of coffee at lunchtime, by 6 o'clock in the evening, half of the caffeine is still in your kind of body, in your system. And at midnight, a quarter of that caffeine is still in your system. So if you're having like a coffee in the evening, it takes such a long time for you to clear that, and that is going to have a huge impact on your sleep. So, you know, when it comes to sleep hygiene, things like, not drinking caffeine after midday, cutting back on alcohol, blood sugar balance, avoiding scary films and watching the news, and kind of honouring your natural circadian rhythm can all really help.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we so often try to kind of overlook all those things to kind of wash them down, don't we? But actually, yes, there are people for whom sleep is completely eluding them, and that's a much deeper, bigger issue. But for the majority of people, it's those really simple things that can make such a huge impact.
Yeah. So I run a sugar-free challenge a couple of times a year. It's a free challenge, anyone can join, and we just try for 5 days to go sugar-free. And it is amazing the number of people that say that their sleep improves when they ditch sugar, even in that short amount of time. So it really does have a huge impact on kind of our physiology and our sleep.
Yeah. Wow. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Michaela.
You're welcome.